Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Paint with Sean. So, today we are working on some of our foreground details. So, we're going to be adding in our little bush and rock structure over in this area, and we're going to continue finishing up right in here with the rocks and the little bit of snow pile. And there is one faint tree, its own individual tree with some sort of medium browns right behind our big tree here. So we're going to try and get all that stuff in here today. Again, a lot of this is fine detail work as it comes up forward, so it does take a little bit longer. I am trying to take some more time and put as much detail into recreating this image fairly close. So broad strokes, we can get some rocks and we can get bushes and trees and stuff in fairly quickly most of the time in an impressionist style. But when you're going into a detailed style, the closer the stuff gets and the closer you can see it, the more refined those details are, like all of the little individual bark pieces and stuff coming through our big tree in the front as our main eye-grabbing structure. We really want that to pop and be very well done. So we're going to work on that today. The tree will be our final episode, but we're going to get these detail pieces in here today. So the very first one I want to start with is over here on the right, is this rock here, and we've got sort of a lighter greenish brown. Okay, so I'm going to do this with a, I don't even know, a kind of small brush. It's got a little flat edge. I don't know the names of all these brushes. So I just want to get it wet and sort of dab it off so it'll be ready to mix with the paint here well. Make sure there's nothing, no dust or anything on my brush. All right, so we're going to grab some brown here, pull it over into a little pile, and I don't need a ton of paint for this one because we're just making one little rock. And it's sort of a lighter brown kind of color, and so I am going to add a good bit of white to this to lighten it up, and I'm going to get just a corner touch of yellow, little tiny bit of yellow to soften that brown. It sort of brings it over to the tan coloration. Okay, and so I just want to lighten this up a little bit more, make this fairly close color to that thing. Okay, and it's not quite a straight brown, so I'm going to add a tad of black to sort of muddy that brown color. There we go. And I'm going to add some white back to it, so that sort of has a counteracting effect with the black, but the black kind of muddies things. So straight black and white is very difficult to mix together and ever get back to that pure color. So once we've put that in there, it kind of gives us a little bit of an opportunity to play in this color range. So I just want this a little bit lighter here. And again, we're never going to be exact, and there's a multitude of colors within this, so I'm just trying to get one that seems sort of close. Now, I'm going to touch my green just to tint this a little bit because it's got sort of a mossy look to it. Okay, so you may not even be able to see that on the bristles. It's very close, but this seems to be a fairly close color. So again, I'm just trying to find the places where these land within the painting, and I've sort of made some structural pieces so the rock sort of comes down and it ends kind of at the edge of our big tree here. So we'll put it to about here. Okay, and it's going to come down just above this big streak here. All right, so if I want to just kind of make my little piece here, we can give ourselves a little idea where this rock will live. Okay, and it's fairly flat on the top. So again, this is just sort of a structural move right here. This isn't going to include any detail. This is just for us to see where our rock is kind of going to be in proportion to the painting. Okay, so it's okay to not put a lot of commitment into, some of these strokes, you can kind of give yourself a little bit of a line out of where that's going to be. Now this rock is sort of over here, but we've got some snow that comes up in front, so we'll actually do the rock first and then bring the snow up over the top. Anything that's in the front we always do last. Okay, so we're just going to kind of fill this in over here with this color. Really looks like sort of less of a sharp edge. Okay, so again, if you don't have a lot of paint, this is going to kind of break and not come in as solid. I'm going to grab just a tad bit of water and thin this out. This will lighten the color just slightly, so if you're ever putting water into a color, it's hard to keep the same darkness to the color. So it does lighten it just a bit. So you can see that's not quite as dark. Maybe you can't. You might have to zoom in on your video to see some of these microscopic color changes. So when we're doing some of the more broad strokes like the sky and the mountains and some of the pieces that are bigger and farther away, those can typically be easier to see for you guys. But sometimes some of these detail works that we get into, I don't spend a lot of time editing these videos. I kind of put them out there for you, and you guys get a good glimpse of really the process of what's going on without any of the fancy stuff most of the time. So I came into my white and just kind of lighten this color up a little bit. Now I'm going to switch from this sort of finer tip brush to this more rounded tipped one. So hopefully I'm in the right place. But this allows for a less uniform distribution of paint. All right, so I want that so that I can make unnatural forms, which is how shadows in the rocks work. Now our rock is going to have a big stripe of white snow all over the top. So I just want to add in some of the underneath pieces, and then again the front layers are going to go over the top. So I'm in sort of a mixture of the lighter and the darker colors that I've created by adding some water and distributing that. Not only does it lighten it, but I added a little bit of white to that. So I have kind of a lighter value of this same sort of color. And I just want to come in here and lighten this in an uneven nature. Okay, so this brush has kind of a rough texture. Okay, so it will pull some of the paint on there, right? But it will make it so it's not quite so even. And that's sort of what we're looking for within our worlds. We don't really want this to stand out and be too exact. Okay, so I didn't have a lot of paint on there before. All right, I'm going to put a little bit more back on. This area over here didn't get much, so we're going to give it some love right there. And if you ever need to cover up, you can always come back after it's dried and add more layers. Okay, so this is getting real thin here where the paint didn't adhere because I'm using a real thin paint. I wanted to stretch it out a little bit, so I'm just going to touch into some of my brown. It's kind of a darker area. I'm going to just sort of dab this in here. Let's get a little bit more paint on there. Okay. And if you dab, it kind of sticks. All right. If you stroke, it kind of wipes it off. So some of these strokes are going to be things you want to play with too. Is the application also matters, not just the color itself. All right. So we've got a good little darker spot going on. So I'm gonna touch in my black here and bring that over. And black and brown usually goes more towards the gray side, but that usually hints more at a shadow type thing. Okay, so we're gonna put a little bit of that in there, get ourselves a little more of that brown, touch more of the black. Gets dark real quick, so be careful with that black. Just a tiny bit goes such a long way. Now at the top up here, we've got a little bit of a darker area. that is up on the top here. And some of this is going to be covered up by our white streak of snow at the top, so that's all right. But we just want the indication of some darker area up there. So we're going to drop a little bit of that in there, some of this over here. Okay. So we're just having a good little time adding some light and dark pieces in here and give it a little bit of flavor to it. Oh, I wiped my color off. So again, pressure, guys, is very important what you're doing over here. A lot of that's going to be covered up by our little snow line here. So I just want to put a little darker edge on this little rock here, and he's looking pretty good. So we're going to finish him up real quick, and then we'll move on to our little bush. Okay, so we're going to add a little bit there. That's okay, that can be part of our bush. Okay, I've got a pretty dark little rock situation going on over here, so we're going to add a little more of that black to it and really give it a good shadow on this end. Okay, and again, I can just feather this out with my brush, so as the paint gets applied, it sort of becomes less and less that comes off with each stroke. Okay, so we've got our little darkish areas going on. We got a little bit of a area right here that's kind of darker. So we're gonna just throw in some of those little strokes, and we just tap it, and it sort of distributes some of that darker color that we've got on there. Okay, so we've got our little rock going on here. I do want to do the white that is this little piece, so it's almost a pure white on the edge where the sun is shining, and then it gets a little bit of a shadow as it comes in here towards our dark area and sort of ends in here. Okay, but this kind of covers up most of the top edge, so just a little bit of that's going to be showing there, and it kind of darkens down in. So I'm going to wash off this brush that I was doing in the brownish color here, and we're gonna start with some darker color. Okay, so I want to start at the darkest end of this, and then we'll just feather into the white at the edge. So I appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. We've been working on this painting for the last several episodes, so if you want to go back and watch, this is step by step. We'll show you every single piece of how this got to this exact place. And this is a recreation, obviously, of a picture that was taken by one of my buddies, actually. He submitted this to me in a contest, and it got selected. So I'm recreating this picture and going to hand this off to him. It's a local ski area and a very famous tree. So anyway, we are coming in here. So we've got sort of a grayish, and we can really even, you know, I haven't done this in previous videos, and this kind of blurs things, but maybe for you guys. This is the area that we're talking about right here. So we're going to come in and we're going to put sort of a lightish purpley gray, kind of similar to the color above, but a little more in the blue tone. So I want to get some blue, and again, I just like to pull some of these colors out and mix them individually over in their own little piles, so that I'm not messing up the actual pile of the real color itself. Okay, and I just want to touch in the red. All right, a little bit of red goes a long way in this, so we're going to bring this, you know, to a little bit of a purple-esque type of thing here. All right, and then we're going to grab some white. I like to emphasize the H, white, and bring this down to a much lighter version of the blue. Okay, now again, I'm trying to really match right in through here, so that might need to be a tad bit lighter, Put a tad bit more white in there. It comes down very, very, very quickly. And I'm going to go just a little bit more of the red. Just a little bit. A little bit more of that purple-esque kind of color. Okay, and a lot of this, again, guys, is just mixing up some colors when you're trying to match something perfect like this. It's really something that is quite difficult a lot of times. So if you ever see people who just mix colors on the fly and they're exactly the same as the real life thing, boy, that's impressive. So this is kind of our color in here. So again, I'm just going to continue to lighten this until it's more of a light color. I don't want it too dark on there. And again, you can always check your color. So if you're coming up here and you say, oh, where's this value? That seems fairly dark. Is that how dark I want it? Maybe not. So I'm going to add a little bit more white to it. Touch of the white. White also goes a long way in this. Okay, so when you're lightening colors, you really want to work on making sure they're where you want them first, and then as you add blacks or whites to lighten or darken them, a lot of times it can change the value. So you may need to redistribute the color back as what you really want it to be. So, okay, so we've got our little rock structure going on here, and it's kind of a lighter color down here towards the bottom. So this brush that I have may actually not be the best brush. So I'm going to use my other one that gives me a little more of a fine line. These are fairly solid lines of white. So we can always come over the top with some highlight pieces too. So that's why I'm starting with the darkest value that's within this shadowed area. Very rarely in nature you're going to have one color. Okay, it's not going to be, oh, this is all white. You can see it comes from yellows and pinks and purples and blues, and that's what I really love about this is you really start to look at nature and see the actual colors. You see it for what it really is in order to repaint it. So this is the magic within this. A lot of people just say, oh, there's a rock, and you just paint a color. Well, there's a little crag in here, and there's a dark spot at the top, and it's kind of more green on this side, and there's a little red in here and whatever. So my rock's actually a little bit darker than what I think this color should be. So I may come in and add some lighter highlights here, but we're going to keep going with making some progress here. So my color's drying out here, so I want to get my brush into it. Okay, and again, I think it's still a little bit too dark, and I need a little bit red. That went real far. Okay, so red makes it also darker, so if you ever have to add red to your blue to go more to the purple side, you're going to definitely want it to be lightened with some more white. The white, say it with me. Okay, so we're just going to put some on here, and again, we can come back to it. I really don't like the color, though. Sorry, guys. We're battling the color mixing. There we go. I finally put enough white in there. Okay, so let's see if we can make some strokes here. So we're coming right here to this little edge. It comes right in here. And we're down about halfway down the rock. Okay, so let's just come right up towards the top, and we're not going to have much of that top actually showing for us. It really comes almost to the top and disappears that piece. Okay, so that's sort of the shape and structure of it. It's a little more of a rounded tip on the bottom there. It needs to come down a little more. Okay. Just dabbing it in a little bit. We can clean this up as we go, and we'll add some more finer details to it. And it comes right off the page. Okay. So not too bad. So now we can come in and we can add some of these other little lighter and darker areas. So I'm going to just play within that same color here and grab some more white and mix into it. And I pull this over off to the side, really not even in the color because I've still got color on my brush. Okay, so I just want to lighten this up a little bit on some of these little highlighted areas. Okay, so this sort of front edge piece is a little bit lighter. I'll just put a little bit of lighter color on there. I'm going to add a lot more white there. So a lot of this, again, guys, just playing back and forth, getting some different variations of the tones that you're working in, and, you know, really putting some highlights and shadows within your pieces. Okay, that's what shows depth and distance and texture. 3 dimensions will always come with shadows and highlights and lowlights. There's always different pieces that show differently. Okay, so again, I'm just going to keep lightening this and get almost a pure white. And just tap this in. I want this to be real light over here. Okay, I'm extending my snow down there a little bit. Brush gets away from me sometimes. And it's okay if it isn't perfect. It doesn't have to match exactly what the picture shows, but we're trying to get close, right? So just a little bit of highlight up here on this top. Okay. A little bit more up here. And just kind of covering up some of this darker color with some of this lighter color and make it look a little more like snow and a little less like, I don't know, purple something. Not real sure what it would look like, but that looks pretty good. Okay, so now we've got this same sort of color here. This is also what is coming up on the bottom down here. So I'm going to come back to my board and just sort of dab off this lighter color and come back to the darker version that I was working in up here. I'm just going to get a touch of water and loosen that up a little bit. Okay. Now again, I was working in quite a lighter color of it, so I'm going to pull back through sort of a couple different stages of my color on the board and try and get sort of close to that same color here. And we'll see what it looks like. Okay, so right here in the middle, there's a pretty sharp little line of a snow edge. And it's sort of and it comes off down in here. Alright, so I want that to be a little bit more of a fine line, so I'm going to thin out this paint a little bit, a little more of the water, And again, this is just a little bit of detail work that we're putting in here, so I want this to be sort of clean, crisp edges. There we go. Okay. And again, we're putting in our darkest color first, and then we'll just sort of feather in some of that lighter color that we were working with before. Okay, and this one doesn't really drop off like that. It kind of feathers over into this. So almost touches. There we go. Okay, and this is going to be a whiter color. So again, we'll come back in here and put some more highlights and lowlights and things going on. Alright. And got a little bit of a sort of rock thing going on over here. Not wanting to do a ton in that, but I will grab my other brush. I'll throw a little bit of dark color in there, and it doesn't have to be too much because it's going to have some streaks of white coming over the top. So I just want to get all this bluish color out of this one. Okay. We'll grab some black and some brown. Give ourselves a fairly dark color. And again, this is really going to be covered up for the most part. We just want to get some good little shadow piece going on in there. Okay. So this is right about here. It is just under our middle tree. So we've come over a little too far with this rock, and that's okay. We've been playing off a scale just a tad the whole time, so this is just going to be something for our little bush to sit between. Okay, so we're going to come in like this and just give ourselves sort of a little rock structure in here. Okay, we don't really have to come down too far, but if we get over it, it's a little bit okay, because we're going to come back over this again with some nice white snow and stuff. Okay, so that just gives us something dark to hold a shadow. You gotta have the dark to see the light, guys. That's one of the things of life, you know. It's very true in the literal term. You know, it's got to have a darker color to allow these areas where it's dark over a lighter color. Boy, it's easy to see the edges. But in life too, you know, really, you can only appreciate good stuff happening if you have something bad to compare it to. Is it good? Well, compared to what? You know, if you've had a job and you don't like it, and then you happen to get fired, well, oh my gosh, maybe that job wasn't as bad as I thought. At least I was getting paid before. But then if you got that job back, boy, how much are you really going to appreciate that job again? So, comparison, guys, that's very important. So, I just am looking at my thing here, and I don't like how it looks. So, got a little detail piece right there. Okay, and that's kind of how it works too, guys, is sometimes you just play a little bit at a time, and you kind of step back and you see things, and you kind of come back and adjust them. It's really nice like that with painting. It doesn't have to all be done in one shot. I think I've been working on this one for about 2 weeks, and you guys get to see all the individual pieces as they come about, but it definitely is dry in between, and I get to look at it a lot and enjoy even just the in-between of the painting. So hopefully you guys are enjoying yourselves on your own little painting adventures, and having some good times with color and form and shape and all the things that we do to make these happen. So appreciate you guys coming along for the ride. So we've got our little snowbank kind of continued into this. We're going to add in some more of these highlight colors with some of the whites. Okay, so again, I've got that same blue brush, and I'm just putting some white, running it through. And right in here, we've got ourselves a little patch of some of this lighter color here. So these never really seem to dry quite as light. It's always a little darker on the drying side of things. So keep that in mind when you're adding color in, that when you do put it in there, it might not stay that exact color. Okay. Now we've also got right in through here, and it comes out to be a fairly light color, almost white. So I'm just going to grab a little more white, run my brush through the white with the same color I got, so it's not a pure white. It allows it to just be a lighter value of that same color. Okay. So I'm just sort of dabbing right over into here and giving it a little bit more of a lighter color to it. And got a little bit that comes up in here. All right. So again, guys, we can play with these for quite a long time. And then we do have one more little rock structure going on right down here below that. So I don't want to put too much detail up to that piece. But our other colors are looking real good. Okay. So I like this little coloration going on in here. We are getting towards the end of this little piece here. And we're going to continue on with this painting to add our bush structure and some of these other rocks. Again, because this is such fine detail, it takes me quite a bit of time to run through these things. So I appreciate your guys' patience within this as we go through this process, and we're going to continue adding on more of our detail within our paints. And down in here we've got some of this bluish white color going on. So we're just going to cover up our little rock a little bit. And all these streaks are kind of going this direction. Okay, so this is a fairly thin paint I'm working with. Put quite a bit of water into it, so it is going to make sort of a more distinct line. So if you don't want hard lines, you can make ultra fine little lines here with really thin paint. So you can dab, and that will also take out some of that line, whereas if you stroke, it actually can make it very detailed lines. So I'm just putting in some of this little lighter color here to kind of play off as our snow coloration. And rubbing does allow it to kind of blend a little bit, right? So just grabbing some more this white. I just want to lighten it up just a tad. I like this color that we're working in here. There's a good little strip right in here. Okay. Alright, and just kind of muddy these colors up a little bit. Okay. Alright, so that gives us a little rock indication going on right in here. Alright. We're having a good time with that. Okay, so We're going to put one more little rock down here, put our little bush in here. This actually comes this way, drops this way. There we go. Give us just a little highlighted tip in there. A little bit of snow. There we go. Sometimes you just see things. Put them in. Put them in, guys. Have a good time with this. That's what it's about. Okay? Want to really make sure that we're just enjoying ourselves through this process. Okay, so we got a little bit of some of this blue in here, and we're going to fade it in with some of our whites, and we've got a little bit of things going on in here. Some of these colors have little streaks in them, and just enjoying ourselves. So appreciate you guys hanging out with me. I know I say that a lot, but it really is enjoyable to share this with somebody as you go along with your work here. So we're just gonna continue having a good time and throwing in little pieces there. Okay, so let's get into our other little rock. All right, so I'm just gonna wash my brush out. I'm not even sure if there's anything on it. And we're gonna come in again with our little dark to green to sort of a light tan color. It's kind of weird. So I've got some brown. We're going to add in some, not that much black, just a little bit of black. And this is just going to be, you know, right sort of down over in this area. And it also has its own little shadow, so it only comes out to just to the right of this little area. So it kind of comes down here and make the little sounds. It's kind of fun. I don't know. Bob Ross always did that when he made trees and waterfalls and things. It was just adds a little enjoyment to it. The joy of painting. Bob Ross is the guy I learned how to paint from, so I've never really gone to school or any of that kind of stuff. I'm more just self-taught, replicating what I've seen on TV. Watched a lot of episodes of Bob Ross. He was such a good painter, in the sense that he made it seem easy. Some of his paintings, now that I look back at them, are not the greatest quality, but he also did them in 30 minutes. And that was the magic of it, is he didn't do stuff like this. He didn't spend 10 minutes on a rock, like that was just not part of his process. He would get in and get it done. And the painting still looked amazing for a very short period of time. So some of the stuff that I do is more Bob Ross-esque, where we get in and we just get the thing done, and it's not there forever. But a lot of the things like this, where I'm trying to really recreate a painting and make it look realistic, we're going to spend a little more time doing those things. Okay, so we've got our little rock structure kind of put in there. I don't think it's exactly what I want it to be, so I'm going to add just a tad more of this and just kind of bring this front edge a little bit less of a dramatic drop. Okay, and all this underneath is going to be covered up. So I want to put some lighter color to it. It's quite a bit lighter, so I'm going to grab some brown, some yellow. Alright. No more of the brown. Alright, and we've got sort of a little white. Just tone it down a little bit. And we've got sort of a yellow front to this bad boy, so let's put a little bit on there. Alright. Okay, so it's a little bit lighter right there. more of a yellowish type color. Okay, I don't want to take a ton of that off of there. I want it to really stand out. Okay, there we go. Just a little bits here and there. Just little bits. Okay, and then the middle has a touch more of the green to it. So we're just gonna mix that same color with just a little green. It doesn't have to be too complicated. Alright. And again, we're just kind of feathering these colors in here. Okay, give it some texture like a rock has. And it sort of just fades into that darker brown color up there. So I'm going to lighten that just a tad. A tad bit of green in there. There we go. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so got some of our rock color, and again guys, remember these are going to dry darker, so that's why we're putting them on a little bit lighter than what they may seem. Okay, and again we're going to have some of that bottom color sort of covered up in there, so just want to muddy that a little bit so it's not quite so. There we go. Okay, so we've got a rock in there. Now, the top of it is kind of what it's going to be. I do want to drop off just a tad bit of that with some of my blue. Just chop off a little bit of that edge of that thing. Okay, so I'm going to come pull a little bit of my white into my blue color here, and we can do a little doctoring up. I don't really like the angle, so I'm just going to put some over the top and drop off some of that top of there. Okay, and again, you guys get as much time as you want to work on these paintings, so if you want to go faster or slower or whatever you want, totally up to you. You guys get to decide how your world looks and what it comes out to be. Okay, I'm taking off almost a little too much there. Need a little more water. If you're having a tough time making a sharp edge, okay, touch the water. Thin your paint out. A thin paint will make such a fine, fine, fine edge on a thing. Okay? You can really make that like a pencil. Okay. Yep, and then I'll just blend it out with my finger. It looks good. Okay. So now we're going to come back. We've got a lot more of a greenish color going on. So I'm going to touch into my green, even though I've got this blue on here. I really want this to be on the greener side, and I need a little more blue in there too, just to darken it. Okay. So we're going to darken it. Come on in here to our a little more green in that, really. So we're going to come over here to our little rock structure, and most of this is covered up. Almost to the top here. There's a little edge. Bloop. And then it kind of drops in a little bit. Need a little more of my water in my paint. Okay, and about halfway up the rock, 3/4 maybe, right here, it kind of just slides down like that. a little bit. Give it a little bit of a brush. This piece is here. Okay, and this is actually going to be blended back with some white. Alright, so we've got sort of our greenish little tone here. Looks pretty good. Okay, and then I'm going to grab my white. Same sort of color, but it comes almost to a pure white. So we're going to lighten that down a whole bunch. Alright, so just to the top of it here. It sort of blends out into white. White really cover. Ooh. It's still wet, so I gotta be careful touching it. Just jacked up my whole snow line here, guys. But that's alright. Again, we play with what works. Right? And come back in here and put in a little bit more of the white over the top, and we'll make it look good. Okay, not everything is exact, guys. It's never gonna always play out every time how you want it. You just roll with the punches. Okay, so we've still got the same colors we're still working with. We're not doing too much different here, so it's alright. I want that to really be that bluish color, so I'm gonna get again in my water, get off some of this white here. My brush will be wet, so I'll be able to come over to my bluish color, blue green, put a little bit back on there. Okay, there we go. Alright, so the bottom is going to have a pretty solid color of white, and we can finish off this bottom edge over here. So I got to get it up over the top of my ridge edge and just come through with some white. Okay. We've done a good job, I think, kind of matching color and playing within some of these different ranges here. It's been fun. A lot of times that's a little bit of a struggle, guys, getting those colors the way you want them to be. We've even got a little bit more of that yellow down in here. Okay, so I'm going to touch in my yellow here, play over here a little bit with some of these same colors I got. Boy, that yellow is strong. Strong. Okay, so lots and lots of white. Just pull through some of that white down there at the bottom. Alright, and we've got this yellow in here. Boy, that's strong. A lot more white. I want this to still stay on that white side of things. Okay, yeah, there we go. Okay. Alright, so we've sort of blended in with some of this yellow as well. Just little highlights of it. Boy, that one pops. That's a popper right there. So let's get a little more white on it. A little more white. Quite a bit more white. Yeah, we're just going to lay over the top a little bit. Okay. And again, you know, we can play down in through this and try and match every little highlight and low light and all that kind of stuff, but we'd also be here for days if we really try to do some of that stuff. So we want to make sure we're also making progress and moving forward with our painting. So it's a little bit of some of that yellowish white up in there. I like it. Okay. I'm just going to get most of the paint off my brush here and just sort of scrub right in here to lighten that edge. I just don't want that to be quite that firm of an edge. Okay, there we go. So I like it. We got a little more yellow in there than we probably should, so let's grab some more white here and we'll finish off this very bottom edge. Make it look nice and pillowy white. Okay. So we'll just come over this polar whites. And we'll just throw some of that in there. Okay. So we're doing pretty good here. We've definitely spent a good period of time here. We're going on an hour with this painting, so let's go ahead and drop in our bush right here. We can do that one, I can say semi-quickly. Let's see if we can get that one done here in about 5 minutes. So I'm just rinsing my brush out. So it's one of the things is you want to wash them while they're wet. Don't let them get dry and then try to wash them later. And one of the other tips that I will tell you that I've found from personal mistakes, mistakes are, learning opportunities. Don't soak your brushes. Do not sit them in the water and leave them there. These handles are made out of wood and they will crack and break. They get swollen with the water and then they dry out and they crack. So you want to make sure that you get all the water that you can off of the things. I always do this after I get done washing them. It's kind of a fun little game. But you get all the water off of them that you can and let them dry that way. Otherwise, your brushes aren't going to last you very long. The bristles are going to get worn out and caked and broken and that kind of stuff. And the handles can get messed up too. So you really want to take care of your equipment. So I'm just over here rinsing a few of these out just to get some of that water off. And the last one we're going to use is our nice little script liner brush. So this one you can actually see is cracked. Left her in there overnight and she didn't like it. So I'm going to get some water on this. Again, the water is what allows us to get our fine edges, okay, our really thin lines of things. Okay, so I've got water on my brush. I haven't even wiped it off on my paper towel or anything. And now this is sort of a dark red, almost barberry type of bush. I don't know if you know what a barberry is, but those are very common where I live. So I'm going to make a very dark red color with some brown and some red. All right. I'm going to stay more to the brown side on this in the beginning, and then we can come back and add some highlights of red if we need to. And I want this a little bit darker, so I'm going to touch the black. And I want this to have the red tinge to it, okay? But we want this to really stay dark. So I've got black and brown and red. And again, it's not quite as dark as I want it to be. So I'm just going to add a little bit more black to it. I do want that red to stay in there. So when you add these darkening colors, you may have to add back the color that you really are trying to show on this. All right. Some of this is really dark, so I really want to add more of this black. And I keep adding more and more and more of this paint. So the very last step is going to be thinning it down. This is going to add more water to it. So this becomes a very, very almost ink-like structure. Consistency, I guess. Structure is not really the word. So I think I got a pretty good It's sort of a reddish brown. Okay, so I got most of the ink off of my brush, and then I went back to my water here, and I'm just really thinning this out. Okay, really, if you hold this board up here, this should just run right almost off the board. Okay, so I'm gonna get as much ink out of my brush as I can, come back in here, and I'm just gonna roll it. Okay, so we wanna just roll this in here. Roll it into your brush. And you can see that you can just get it down to just a nothing point. Ultra fine tip. Now, what I have found is that when you touch, the thickest part of the line is where you touch. When you go and you release is where you can get those fine tips. So the tips are always where you want to let go off of the canvas. All right? So again, we're not going to have every single branch in here. Number one, I can't see them all. They get too grainy. It's not how it works. But number two, we just want to indicate, mostly where this structure lives. So right here at the base is where we're going to start. So we want to make up to sort of this area as the top of our branch. So it comes up most of the way up the rock, has a little hook, and comes up in here. Okay, maybe I went a little bit too high, but you get the nature. Okay, so that's a good main branch structure there, and we're just going to continue to add little pieces. Okay, so you can see you can get ultra fine tip points with this little brush here. I absolutely love it for stuff like this. Okay, so we're just going to continue to add some little lines with nice fine tips, light pressure. Okay, ultra light pressure. And if you have a little bit of a jiggle to your hand, that's okay too. They don't always look the same. So I'm going to try to add most of the big branches first. So starting down here, one kind of comes up sort of in this direction. Okay. And we've got a bigger one that kind of comes out over the middle of the rock here. I got one, looks like it comes pretty well right on top of that there rock. Okay. Got a few little arms coming off here. Little bits. So I broke my own rule. I tried to start at the tip. Trying to go in and connect doesn't always work. Okay, so I really want to touch the branch, go to the tips. Touch the branch, go to the tips. So we're going to just have a couple little red pieces in there. We got another branch that sort of comes out from the bottom here. Comes up into the left of this one. And you can see I haven't even reapplied one time. So this ink is, well, it's like ink. Very thin, very thin. Okay, so we're just going to continue to add some little branches out here. And the less pressure you put on this, the thinner these lines will be and the lighter they'll come out. Okay. So sometimes you may need to be above it to allow that pressure to be there and just something light to come off. Okay, so if you need to steady on the side, that's okay. You can do this however you need to do it. Okay. I'll just keep adding little branches to my structure and adding this in as we go. So you guys can see now how I'm making these little detail pieces in here. And today we only are working on our little rock area over here. I was hoping we'd get a little bit more, but again, I tell you, some of these good things are worth the wait, and they take a little bit more time, and that's okay to do. So I'm going to take the time and continue to add, all of my little brush strokes in here to make this look like a little bush hanging out over here. But I really want to take some time and appreciate you and thank you for hanging out with me through this painting. We're really creating something fantastic that we can give to somebody and they can hang on their wall forever. So it's okay to take a little bit of extra time in your paintings. Don't be too critical on yourselves. Allow things to come and work and play as they come out, and appreciate the progress that happens with painting. So thank you again for your time, and we will see you guys in the next video.